Welcome to Amplify Voices of the Global Majority Online Summit for our fourth year. This is focusing on how we heal. And I am not your host, Reggie, but I am your stand-in for this moment. And it's my honor to open today's programming with our offering from Adaku. And like everyone to just take a nice breath in and let it out as you begin to settle in. And Adaku is a queer Nigerian healer, an artist, and teacher who's committed to cultivating moments that are strategic and healing. With over 2 decades of experience as a healing justice practitioner, their work is rooted in liberatory ritual, herbal medicine, and somatic movement. Adaku is also the founder of Harriet's Apothecary and co-founder of the Freedom School for Intersectional Medicine and Healing Justice. And this morning, they offer Reservoir, a sacred space to release the weight of grief, reclaim power and agency, and remember ancestral tools of liberation. So let us welcome Adaku, and I will turn it over to them to begin the rest of our time together.
Thank you, beloved. Thank you, Miles. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you to the Kripalu team for all of your intention, weaving, and commitment to making this space this week real. I can imagine that it has been so healing for many, and may all the seeds that you plant bear good fruit. I'm so grateful to get to be here and welcome comrades to this space, to Reservoirs. It is not lost on me that there are many things that you could be choosing to do with your time right now in this wild, wild, precious life, and you chose to be here. And I feel very humbled by your presence and also by your extension of commitment to be more healing in this time when there's a lot of chaos, crisis, and contradiction. Thank you for your presence. So by way of just landing in this space, I'd love to know a little bit more about who's here. If you feel so moved, if you have desire and capacity, please offer your name. I also really appreciate, I think Miles just dropped this in, the lands that you are from. There are many, many lands that we hail from the global north and global south. And if you're here in the global north and you are curious about who has stewarded those lands, there's a really great website here that you can look at to name the lands that you call home, that you honor. And then what's one thing that you either want to release, reclaim, or remember in this space? One thing you want to either release, reclaim, or remember. And go ahead and drop it into the chat. Damara, thank you so much for kicking us off. I hope I said your name correctly. Welcome, welcome. Grand rising to you too as well. And as you all are bringing in your introductions, I'll share mine as well. Again, Adaku, I use all pronouns. I am beaming to you all from Lenni Lenape land, also known as Edgewater, New Jersey, by way of Lagos, Niger, where I grew up, where a lot of my people are from, specifically Igbo people. So Igbo Kwenu to anybody in the house who's repping Igbo lands, Igbo heritage. And I see the lands beaming in the chat. Welcome from Peru, from Cambridge, from Washita lands. Welcome, Salix, Devon, Rosalind, I see you. Welcome, Claudia. Grateful that you are here. Thank you for being willing to name, wanting to release a cloud that's been following you, wanting to remember your truest self and how to take care of your body, wanting to reclaim reconnection to ancestry, yes, and wanting to find more home in your body. All right. Keep them coming, y'all. Really appreciate already this level of self-awareness around, okay, where am I right now? What might need some more reclamation, some remembrance, and some release. May you be loved, Mara, may you be loved. And we may or may not be able to release or remember or reclaim these things in this space. That is the hope that we get to. And even by planting the seeds, my hope is that in some way, whether in this space or beyond, you get to reclaim what you need, release what is yours to release, and remember who and where you are. So thank you again, Miles, for that intro. Just want to share a little bit more about who I am. I come from a long line of farmers, of witches, of organizers who grew up specifically in the southeastern part of Nigeria. And I feel really honored that I've been holding and moving with that legacy since I was little. My first organizing campaign was when I was 8, when a number of us organized to remove somebody who was sexually assaulting a number of us in our school. And we made that happen. And it was such a permanent marker on me around the gift of community and what can happen when we build the communities and containers of care that we need outside of power and authority. I also come from war survivors. Both of my parents survived the Biafran Civil War, where over 2 million of our people were killed at the hands of genocide. And they survived through cultivating ecosystems of care with plants, with building safety teams that would protect their communities, with building different kinds of rituals that really allowed for people to not only remember who they are, but also reclaim their ability to be able to create the conditions that they needed to be alive. And in true Aries Sun, Gemini Moon, Leo rising fashion, I wear many, many hats and roles and unitards. So I love that I get to be a grassroots strategist, primarily working inside of racial, reproductive, and healing justice movements, supporting folks in not only meeting urgent crisis, rapid response crisis, but also building long-term power that can support how our people transform conditions of racism and transphobia and ableism inside of our world. And I also get to be a facilitator and ritual artist. I'm really thinking about how do we create spaces where people are able to tap into their own innate power and our own inherent relationships with each other that can set us free. So that's a little bit about me. And our flow today, what we're going to be up to, we're going to be talking about reservoirs, y'all. Reservoirs that you may or may not be connected to, reservoirs that hopefully can sustain you in this time and beyond. We will also be creating some conditions, hopefully, for some restoration and remembrance. And you are each unique. And so your capacity to move towards reservoirs is deeply impacted by the world that is shaping you, the needs and patterns that you have. So we'll get to learn more about that. And then hopefully there will be some practices here that you can take with you to support your sustenance, the sustenance of your precious life, the sustenance of your presence in your communities, and then how you extend your power in the world to support how we make change in this time and into the future. We're going to do a lot of things, but there's some things we're not going to do, okay? So we will not, you know that thing called perfectionism and productivity? You don't have to do that up in here. You can let that go. Everything that has impacted us is also deeply connected to some systemic force of violence and resilience, and we won't bypass the systemic. We will focus a lot on the individual, and we will meet the individual with how systems of violence and possibility are also impacting us. You will not have to push beyond your capacity. You will hopefully, like this ocean on the left-hand side here, flow as you need to. This is a healing space, and it's also not a therapeutic space. So if you're looking for therapy, I'm not the one, but there's some great therapists out there that I hope you can connect with. So what does that mean in terms of invitations, beloveds? Please move at a pace that really honors your presence, your discernment, and your care. And pay attention to when you feel like you might be pushing, performing, or trying to prove something here. You can notice it and then gently pivot to be more curious and compassionate with yourself. You are always at choice here. There will be a lot of invitations to do things, hold things, be with certain things. And you can tell me yes, no, or maybe. You know your body a lot better than I do. So really move at the pace and the knowing of yourself. And then we might not reach completion. There might be more questions that show up for you. So welcome complexity and contradictions, because we are complex and contradictory beings. And I got a lot of goodies for y'all. And some of the goodies might not align with you. And so take what you need and leave the rest. Take what you need and leave the rest. Also, there'll be lots of opportunity for you to share what you know, the wisdom that lives inside of you. And I just want to invite folks to just speak from your own experience, and not pull in anybody's stories if you don't have consent to do that. Okay. A couple of things you're going to need. You don't need to bring these things if you don't have them, but if you have something to write with or write on, gather it. If you want to harvest some water, I have my big jug of water over here. You can't see that. Okay, there we go. If there's a grounding item or a grounding space in your area that you want to move closer to, feel free to do that. And a space that you can feel comfortable enough. I know some of you might be at work, some of you might be at home, some of you might be outside, but whatever fractal of wherever you are is in, let it be 2% more comfortable for you. Inside of Zoom spaces, it is really, really easy for us to try to multitask with a number of different things. So I want to invite you to see if you can give us the gift of your presence, not just for me, but also so that you can receive what is yours to receive in this space. Okay. So feel free to grab what you need. And also many of these things, if not all of them, live within you. So it's okay if you don't have them. Oh, I just skipped over to the last part of the, here we go. Shout out to Canva. All right, so this is our flow. We're about to go into our first practice. We'll talk a little bit about trauma and how it impacts our capacity to welcome reservoirs, notice that they're there, and use them over time in our lives and with our communities. We will then talk about what are possible reservoirs that we can connect with right now internally and also in our world, in our ecosystems. And then we'll do another practice. Sprinkled throughout, there's going to be a number of reflection questions that you can answer in a number of ways, via chat, with your voice, through movement. And then we'll talk a little bit at the end about how to sustain some of the practices that you might want to take on in this particular moment. So that'll be our actual flow for our time. All right, so we're going to go into our first practice. It's going to be a consent practice. Most of us need more practice saying yes, no, or maybe. And in this space where we're going to be really centering self-determination and choice, we want to be able to practice moving towards what feels aligned with you at any given moment. And this is such an important practice in life in general. We have many, many different forces, many, many different people who are trying to organize our bodies for their own gain, for their own egos, for their own pleasure and greed. And part of the violence that exists in our world is that we often don't get to choose what happens to us. And so in this space, even as we're moving through, I want to keep inviting and honoring your choice and your capacity to not only give permission um, to myself or to other people, but also to be in honest relationship with yourself. So much of the power that lives within us is noticing when and how we understand how we are relating to our world. And so we're going to be inside of a 3-minute consent practice, 3 to 4 minute consent practice. And again, if you have your own consent practice that you want to do, you can totally mute me and do your own thing. And then if you want to do this together, feel free to join. So in this moment, even make the choice to decide how you want to place your body, how you want your body to be in your space. So you could be seated, you could be laying down, curled up in a bed, or you could be standing. And whatever position that you choose, just let it invite more comfort, more care, even if it's 1% more. And for folks who are sitting by their computer, just give yourself a little bit more space between you and your computer. And just be in a space that you can still hear my voice. We're often so in front of these computers all the time, and just give yourself a little bit of space so that you can come closer to you. Good. And when you're ready, connect with an anchor for your attention for yourself. So that could be your breath. It could be the curve of your spine. The anchor could also be your eyeballs, or maybe they're your toes. You could also notice a number of different anchors all at the same time. And from this place, we're not trying to fix anything. We are just being with what is. Notice how these anchors are showing up today in this moment. So what's the temperature quality? What feels warmer or cooler? And what's your relationship to pressure with these anchors? Is there a part of those anchors or you that's a bit more compressed or a bit more open? Perhaps you pay attention to the pulse or the movement of what you're noticing. And in a moment, I am going to ask your body yes, no, or maybe questions. And what you're going to do is just to pay attention rather than noticing what your mind offers to these questions. Your mind might say something, which is fine. I want to invite you to actually drop below the neck. So how does your body choose to say yes? How does your body choose to say no? How does your body choose to say maybe? And for some of you, paying this close attention to your body might be a lot. So you might want to pay attention to a piece of nature, a fractal of nature in your environment. And you can notice your relationship to it as we move through this practice. Okay. There is no right or wrong. There is just how your body chooses to be in this time. So I'm going to bring in the questions, and your role in this moment is just to notice, how do these questions land on you? And how does your body want to respond? Do you want to stretch your arms overhead? Do you have siblings? Would you wear something glittery today if you had the chance? Again, just keep noticing what's happening below the neck. What's the pace of your heart? What's the quality of your breath? How do you say yes, no, or maybe? Do you enjoy dancing in a group of strangers? Would you go to a Beyonce concert if she came to your city? Do you prefer salty over sweet? Good. Check out what's happening in your belly. What feels open? What feels tucked in? What feels quiet and cool? A few more questions here, yes, no, or maybe questions, just to see how your body responds. Is spring your favorite season? Do you enjoy the sound of your own laugh? Do you miss somebody today? Do you have energy right now? Do I like how I'm showing up in this moment? Good. Again, there's no right or wrong. How does your body respond with a yes, with a no, with a maybe? What's the height of your shoulders? How clenched or soft are your jaw? How close are your toes together? All right, y'all. You can gently start to actually just keep paying attention to what's here. I'm going to invite you, when you're ready, to um, slowly move back to the computer and share via chat. How did your body respond to a yes, no, or maybe? How did your body respond to a yes, no, or maybe? And feel free to drop it into the chat. Gary, a yes, chest open. Sitting up straight, yes, with a breath in my heart. Joanne, confusion and resistance. Thank you for naming that. Would love to know if that was a yes, no, or maybe, where you felt that. Kate, distinctions around when I say feel a yes, I lean forward. When I move back, that's a no. Okay, Judy, maybe with a smile. All right. Seeing a lot of similarities here with the flow of yes and no, the expansion around the yes. Kira says the yes was stronger in your chest, and a flutter. Sometimes the yes is, or the no, shows out in really loud and specific ways. And other times it might feel like stardust located somewhere in your body, just like little speckles or sprinkles of something. Mary says no pain in your knee or other areas. Beautiful. So much good awareness, y'all. Y'all are like zoomed in. Um, so good job being that aware. I want you to keep inviting and dropping in that level of awareness and also honesty as we move through this whole space with everything that is offered to you. And this is one of many practices that we can do to really see, oh, is this a reservoir that I want to be moving towards, or perhaps no. I also want to offer compassion to people who might not have felt anything. And if you notice, like, I didn't feel nothing at all, that too is noticing something. So even good job. Numbness is something, not being able to connect with a part of you is something. It is information, it is wisdom in some way. So if that is you, thank you for noticing that. And I also want to encourage you that we are never binary. The world tries to place a lot of binaries on us and our bodies. So it's never just, I don't feel anything at all, or I feel all the things. Like usually there's a part of your body that feels that's more louder than others, or that doesn't feel something and other parts that do. So I invite you to get really curious about, oh, you might not have felt something in a particular part of your body, but perhaps you might have felt something somewhere else. And also for people who chose to pay attention, not solely on themselves, but we're looking outside to nature, I'd be curious about, oh, how did your relationship to nature that you were connecting with, how did that shift over time? How did your yes, no, or maybe impact your perspective? Okay, yes. Thank you, Av, for modeling, allowing yourself the uncertainty of you don't know, which is good. Yeah, keep moving with that pace. Sometimes you know, and sometimes you don't, and give yourself that space. So, James Baldwin, shout out to one of many ancestors and transcestors who remind us that I am what time, circumstance, and history have made of me, certainly, but I'm also much more than that, and so are all of us. So we are multitudes, we are whole universes, and we are also the sum total of everything that has ever shaped us, every person who has ever shaped us, from generations that we've come from to this present moment. And one of the many things, a fractal, it's not the only thing, but one of many things that has shaped us is trauma. And when I talk about trauma, I talk about what I mean by it is what happens when an overwhelming experience exceeds our capacity to be with our life or to cope in a moment. Oftentimes, it can leave really lasting imprints on our nervous system, our bodies, our sense of self, and also our relationship to the world, to people, to land. And for many of us, we know that trauma is not just what happened to us, but also what were the things that didn't get to happen to support how trauma moves through its rites of passage in our body. Whether it's things like receiving the kind of support that we longed for, or being protected and safer, or getting the kinds of resources that we needed to process and integrate an experience. And this can come from a single moment in time, like an accident, or it might be a pattern over time, like being a survivor of violence, being inside of land that is constantly having to navigate US imperialism. Or maybe it's something that you inherited over time from your grandparents, from your great 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 grandparents, because of how they've navigated displacement. And trauma, in as with most things, if not all things in our life, is deeply impacted by power, oppression, and the social context that we're living in. All of our lives are shaped by the ways in which power, particularly power that happens at the scale of violence and also power that happens at the scale of healing, all of that shapes our relationships to trauma. And so I'm saying this because all of us have been impacted by trauma in our lives. And as we talk about reservoirs and moving towards healing, we can't just talk about that in a vacuum. Our capacity to be able to name what is healing, to connect with it, and to sustain it is impacted by how we've been shaped over time, particularly by how we've been shaped by trauma. And so in this space, I want you to get really curious about how are you accessing and assessing your sense of safety right here and right now? How do you navigate boundaries and connection? How do you relate to your own needs and desires? And how do you experience presence in your own body? And there's a lot in this space that is going to be familiar to you or unfamiliar to you. And what's your relationship to that when something feels uncertain and unknown? It may or may not be connected to a traumatic event, and it might. So as you notice anything in your body, I think the overall thing here with all these words is, could you get more curious? Could you get more compassionate? So in this moment, one of the things that helps to support trauma's rites of passage in the body is increasing safety and connection. So right here, right now, pause and do one thing on the other side of that pause that can support your safety and your presence. And here's a couple of invitations for you to do. And you get to choose. This is obviously not a comprehensive list, but you can also choose something else that is supportive of you that's not on this list. Sometimes I put timers on my phone, usually on the numerical. So like 222-111-333-444, because I love magical numbers like that. As a reminder to do one thing to support my safety and presence. So in this moment, maybe you adjust your posture. Maybe you wrap yourself with something soft. I literally have a weighted blanket on my feet right now. Maybe you take a sip of water. Cheers. Maybe you name silently or aloud one thing that is true right now, that you're doing what you can. You're safe enough in this space, hopefully. And you don't have to perform. Something else that you could do is lowering the screen brightness or sound, or increasing it if you need more, and softening the intensity of the space so that you can actually be more present. Or it could be something else, okay? Something else. Feel free to drop into the chat one thing that you did. What's one thing that you chose to do? When you chose to do. Yes, hand on heart, posture adjustment, honey. The spine is working, y'all. Come on, Gary, comfy sweatshirt. Yes. Yes to the coffee. Yes to the tea. Ooh, pillows between the knees. I got to try that out, Cheryl. Yes, lay down. Thank you, Allison. Get those pillows. Get cozy, Allison. Hands on lungs. Marcella took your vitamin today. Hi, love. Eye mask. Oh, I just got an eye mask that is weighted. Game changer for sleep. Awesome. Lit your candles, dim the lights. Beautiful, y'all. Keep moving towards care. Keep moving towards care. And as you notice, it only took a few seconds to be able to do these things. Some of you might need a little bit more time to figure out what that is and give yourself that time. Okay. Emma, I love your relationship with the birds outside of your window. Please give them my love as well. And shout out to all the fur babies that are in the space and the human babies. Thank you, Emma. All right. So let's talk about reservoirs, y'all. We're already talking about reservoirs. You're already tapping into reservoirs within and around you. Kelly, thank you for your yoga teachership. And I hope you feel poured into in this space. So I want to share a little bit more of my own understanding when I talk about reservoirs. What am I holding close to my heart? What am I illuminating? When I say reservoirs, I am feeling into the wellspring, literal wellspring of ancestral and embodied wisdom that exists within us. And it's knowledge that is illuminated and also and vibrates, I would even say, inside of our tissues, our cells, inside of our cellular memory. And it's speaking to you right now, all of these sensations, all of these choices, all of these points of connection that are bringing you some level of clarity, some level of care, concern. All of that is you tapping into a reservoir of wisdom and understanding. This is also the life force, the natural life force, I would say, that is beyond human, that exists within us to support our healing and our level of insight and discernment in this life. They're also what supports our capacity to be alive, whether physically, emotionally, spiritually. Sometimes our reservoirs can be lying dormant inside of us, waiting for the right conditions to be more present in our lives. Maybe they might be waiting for timing. Maybe they might be waiting for your presence, for your curiosity, your risk. Maybe they're waiting for a necessary opening to happen in your lives. Reservoirs are also the adaptive intelligence that not only lives in ourselves, but also lives inside of community. This is the shared stories that are passed down from our grandparents around how we created song and herbal remedies in order to figure out how to keep folks away from jail. Maybe there are traditional practices that look like seeds being planted, seeds being braided in our auntie and uncle's hair to make sure that we were able to carry our foods across ocean. Maybe it's the blueprints, the abolitionist blueprints that our great, great, great people who survived war are sharing with us right now about how to resist US imperialism. Ultimately, our people have figured out so many different ways to adapt to change. And that in some ways lives in us and lives around us inside of our ecosystems. And then when I think about reservoirs, I'm also thinking about just the different ways. Oh, thank you, Angelique. You could blame it on my mama. She's got a nice, sweet voice. That's a reservoir that lives inside. So our reservoirs are also our sources of connection and creativity that can be replenished and deepened through intentional practice. Many of you are already doing these things, these practices that you commit to every single day to support how connected you feel to life, whether that is saying hi to your elderly neighbor and supporting with mutual aid, or the yoga practice, as Kelly offered earlier, or it's creating spaciousness for play with your nibblings. So many different regenerative, and the word regenerative is really important because it highlights the fact that we can constantly be replenished through the practices that we choose and the people that we choose around us. So there's a lot of wisdom in this room. What does reservoir mean to you? When you think about reservoir, when you feel into reservoir, what does that mean for you? What does that mean for you? And let's take chat, but also if you want to raise your hand and bring your voice up into the space, Miles, I would love your support with this. If any folks want to take or raise their hand, feel free to do so and we'll bring your voice in. We can take about 2 people. What does reservoir mean to you? Yeah. Okay, so much wisdom up in here. Energy, supply of energy, external and internal resources, plentiful flow, purified and abundant water, a storage area, a place to hold strength and power, continuous nourishment, movement, peace, doing things that replenish you and having a people in my life that do that as well. Yes, beautiful, Rosen. Awesome. Anybody want to share with their voice? What does reservoir mean to you? Ah,
Yes, we have Emma.
Emma, come through. What you got?
Okay, sorry, it wouldn't let me unmute.
I hear you.
Also, my cat Ella Maudel also says hello this morning
Hi, love.
to everyone. I think reservoir to me in this moment is retelling the stories that my Southern roots have shared with me over the years,
Yeah,
especially my father who passed a few years ago, and sharing those stories in collective community
that's right.
as a way of remembrance, but also as a reminder of what I was like, where I come from, but where we as a collective can come from.
Yes, yes, beloved. And what's your father's name, if you want to share in this space?
My father's name is Oree, Oree Rawls. He
Yeah.
passed in January. He actually passed on MLK Day in
Oh,
2023. So my king passed, but he is very much with me. So
yes. I thank him for his presence too in your life and all the stories he's passed through you. Yeah, to move through you right here, right now. Thank you for bringing him into this space. And also thank you for bringing the South up in here.
yes,
You
Georgia.
know?
Yes, swamp, Okefenokee swamp up in this joint.
Okay. Yes.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Emma. And thank you for thank that kitty too. I know they're
I
in the background doing
will.
Marcella. Hi, love.
Good morning. So
Morning.
good to see you.
Good to see you.
I love this question. I was in a session yesterday with Aki, and she was talking about yin and yang energy.
Yeah.
And so, as you're talking about reservoir, it has me thinking about that yin energy she talked about, and but she talked about it being circular. So, as you talk about the regenerative nature of reservoir, I'm thinking about the circular kind of journeying of that yin energy. And she talked about it being dark in a really positive way. It's like internal. So there's a lot of parallels that are connecting my thoughts from yesterday as we move into this conversation. So that's what it's meaning to me in this moment.
Oh, so beautiful, Marcella. Even just that practice of weaving,
Mm,
weaving information across space, because we're not isolated. I mean, I love Aki. Aki's one of my people.
yeah.
And all of us hold different kinds, qualities, textures of wisdom that are not necessarily separate from each other. So I really appreciate, Marcella, what you're actually modeling so beautifully right now is it's just there's so many ways that so much of what we're learning, understanding, medicine that is woven together that we actually get to restitch and bring back together. And that's actually some of the reclamation work that is ours to do in this time, is to restitch what's often been separated. So I want to say thank you for modeling that and also naming that. And also the quality of a reservoir might be dark, it might be light, depending on one, how you're holding it, where it's existing in your body, and honoring the wisdom that lives in both of those places, not creating any kind of hierarchy that lightness or darkness means something better. It just is. It is another place that gets to offer us some level of flow, connection, and resource. Claudia in the chat says, Reservoir, it's a memory of me at my most aligned and balanced mentally and emotionally. I can tap into that feeling, memory, until it becomes you. Yes. I must imagine um, like sucking yourself slowly like molasses until this memory of who you are meant to be fully becomes you. I mean, it already is you. It already is you inside. And we just get to take up more space. You get to take up more space inside of it. Ah, beautiful, beautiful. I need to save this chat because there's so much wisdom up in here. I want to highlight a couple more. So reservoirs that live inside of nature, and this is only a fractal. We have our aquifers, which are underground layers of water-bearing rock or sand that act as these visible or invisible reservoirs that slowly release moisture wherever it's needed, whether it's to wells, to springs, to soil. There are the mangroves, which is in the bottom middle, which are coastal ecosystems that really support the biodiversity of a space. They help to store nutrients, they help to filter toxins, and really protect shorelines from more and more erosion that happens. And then there's tree trunks. I think about the trees that store sugar-rich sap, in the trunks, particularly during dormant seasons, and then act as reservoirs, especially in this time of spring when things are in bloom. And then there are the reservoirs that live inside of us. And we're going to be talking not just about the physical ones like this one. So there's your blood. If you pause right now, you might feel blood moving through you, carrying nutrients, oxygen, regenerating. Maybe you have a scab that's still healing right now. There's your lymphatic and nervous system that is a reservoir for your immunity and draining fluid and detoxing your body. There's your memory. So a bunch of you talked about the things that you know inside of you about how to breathe, how to say no, how to stand up for what is right, how to buck up against the system. These are all reservoirs that live within you. So we're going to move, holding all of that wisdom. We're going to talk about 8 core themes around sites of reservoirs that we can tap into when we need it. So yes, in nature, yes, in our bodies physically. And then there are also, in my work over the last couple of decades, there are 8 core sites, and again, not comprehensive, but these are themes that I've seen in my work and in my relationship with community that really support how reservoirs are connected with, how they are sustained, and how I love the image that, who was it? Talked about like pouring through you until it becomes you, how it helps to move through your body until it becomes more of who you are. So there are 8, and we're going to go through each of these. And as we go through each of these, notice for yourself, which of these reservoirs do you feel tapped into right now? Do you feel like you're moving with, journeying with? Which of these feel depleted or lacking? And we're noticing that not for blame or judgment. We're noticing, one, just to see where we're at, and also noticing to name the need underneath. so we can figure out what needs to be restored, what needs to be remembered, what needs to be released. Okay. And if this is a reservoir that you practice really well, shout yourself out in the chat. Be like, this is the one. I could write a whole thesis on this. This is the thing. And also, if you're like, oh, this is the one that feels super hard, shout that out too. We want to normalize. We want to normalize imperfection. We also want to normalize that we need things to change in order to be alive. So feel free to drop that in the chat. All right. So we start with the root. And you'll notice for each of these, we'll talk about what they are, but also what gets, yes, Claudia, shout out to the vision. We also want to focus on what gets in the way, because we know that it's not just magical, you're going to be in your reservoir. There are literally systems of violence that are actively organized to block us from tapping into the reservoirs that we have in our bodies and on land. And they're not the only thing that exists. There are also things that we can do to restore and reconnect to these particular reservoirs. So we'll talk about what it is, what gets in the way, and then also what can support reconnection. Again, this is not comprehensive. I also want to invite your wisdom to, like, what else would you add to this? So root, this is your foundation. This is your sense of belonging and stability. Many of you have already mentioned this already. It might be connected to the cultural heritage that you've come from, the traditions that help you understand how the world is shaped and how your purpose is in the world. They might be core values. And they remind you of who you are when you are feeling lost. A really good example is, I grew up in Lagos, Nigeria. My parents could have given me an English name, but they gave me the name Adaku, Chineye Uta. Because in our traditions, we believe that our names are spells. It's the word that you hear over and over again your whole life. And so part of them giving me my name Adaku, one, even the way that it sounds, like it's the rhythm of it, the density of it, the gravity of it brings me back home, whenever I hear it, particularly when I say my name to myself. And there's songs and rituals that have been passed down to me that are a part of my root system that remind me of who I am when I get lost up at this US authoritarian world. It helps me return back. What can get in the way? Displacement. Obviously, so many of our homelands have been impacted by colonization and forced migration. So we might not feel connected to our land. Some of us are so tired and exhausted. And if we're constantly moving inside of urgency, we can be moving so fast that we run away from ourselves and move away from our roots. Come on, Mary. Niger up in here. Okay, I see you. Ibo Kwenu. And then your roots, like all of these reservoirs, can be reconnected to, can be restored, sometimes by spending time with elders, whether it's within our chosen or blood lineages or the knowledge keepers. Everything about you, there is a knowledge keeper who holds medicine about it. And so connecting with those folks might connect you with your roots. Creating sacred spaces like altars in your homes to honor your lineage might support your reconnection. Also cooking, any cooks in the house. I love when I'm missing my family. One of the things that I do is to cook the foods that were passed down to me, is to make the medicine that was passed down to me and also share that in community. So that's root. That's the root. And then we have our shields. So this is our precious boundaries, the ways that we're able to say no and protect our time, our energy, and any aspect of life that feels worth or important protecting. And it's how we choose what we let in, who we let in, and what we keep out. It's how we honor our limits. Some of the things that can get in the way, obviously, the ways that we've been, the ways that our boundaries might not have been respected or ignored over time. If we have shaped ourselves because of the world to be either too rigid or too porous, holding too much on our own, or just letting anybody get close to us. And some of us are people pleasers. Some of us do that to survive, and that can get in the way of us connecting with our shield. And we can support connection through doing small everyday acts of creating boundaries, like the one that you did with the consent practice. Like something you can do right now, which is saying no to something in your schedule today. So small acts that can build up the muscle and lead to you saying bigger ones or taking bigger risks around your shield. Learning to listen to the language of your no. Some of us don't know what a no feels like inside of us because we're so used to saying yes. And you actually pausing to learn and practice and to say no helps to reveal what that language of our no feels like, and also honor that it's there and gets to exist. For some of us, it's creating clear agreements with people in our lives. This is how we choose to relate to each other. This is how we will love each other. This is how we'll be inside a conflict. Okay. So there's shield. Yes. Insight. So there is often so much tugging at our attention, and it can be really difficult to be discerning. And so our insight is that knowing, but it's also clarity. I'm not saying certainty, I'm saying clarity. So it's being able to see ourselves and other people clearly, rather than the projections, the performances, even the trauma responses that, or even the greed that can block our view from actually seeing ourselves and other people and the world clearly. It is our ability to be able to name patterns that are consistently happening in our lives and to navigate complexity without oversimplifying it or creating binaries between what is good and bad, what is right and wrong, what belongs and doesn't belong. Things that can get in the way of insight, thank you, Gary, is perfectionism. Again, binary thinking that creates these polarities that often are not true. They might feel true in your mind, let me say that, but they, in a lot of ways, can really move us away from really seeing the totality of a person or a situation. Hypervigilance can also impact our abilities to feel some level of clarity if we're constantly anticipating that something is wrong all the time. What supports our reconnection? Recognizing that we have assumptions that we've either grown into, borrowed from, or use to see the world. Sometimes some of us have trusted counsel, whether that's a really good friend that's going to tell you like it is, or it might be doing divination with an ancestral spiritual practice that helps you really get clear about a path. Or it's finding a moment to actually get still so that you can hear the sound of your own voice. Okay, so that's insight. I want to pause here. There's a lot of goodness dropping in the chat. Let me see here. Vindhyananda, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Apologies if I'm not. One piece of wisdom someone gave me about boundaries: we can't control another person's actions with our boundaries. We can only control ourselves. A boundary says to someone else, if you cross this line, this will be the consequence. Then we follow through with the consequence if they ignore our boundary. Yes. We can't control what other people do. We can act with our own agency to say, actually, this is the terrain that our relationship will exist in. This is what you are choosing to say yes to and what you're choosing to say no to. And this is how we will relate. And if they choose to cross that line, we have some options there about how we will be in that relationship or not. Okay, there's some shouting out of the root slide. Marcella is holding rigidity versus porousness. Curious about your reflection there, Marcella. And M, learning to listen to the language of your no. I'm so curious what your no says. Yeah, perfectionism is a consistent block for you. M, are you willing to say, what is your perfectionism taking care of for you? What is it taking care of for you? Feel free to come off voice to share it with your voice, or you can drop it into the chat. Yes, and Emma, so good being a good practice community partner, amplifying that you are not alone. Yes.
So you said perfectionism. It kind of puts me in a loop
Yeah.
of, wanting to create or do or even just show up. And I pull back because it's not exactly the way I want it to be, or I think it's not going to be exactly the way I want it
Yeah.
to show up or present. So it's a struggle.
Yeah. Yeah. It is a struggle. And I imagine your perfectionism has supported you in some ways. Like it has some gifts and it has some costs. Would you agree, or would you be like, nah, it's all bad? Yes. Okay. I see your response. Yes. So, and thank you for being so vulnerable with us and just sharing that pretty intimately. I will say for myself, perfectionism is something that I dance with, and I'm constantly trying to navigate and release and remember that there's actually another way to exist in the world rather from, perfectionism that isn't real. And there's a lot of, with all the things that we're noticing right now about what gets in the way, in particular, there are gifts and there are costs to those things. So our bodies choose these things, or our bodies interact with these things in some way in order to support our safety, our connection, our dignity, and belonging. My perfectionism has kept me alive in a lot of ways. It is part of how I've been able to build safer homes for queer and trans folks who are asylum seekers, both in Lagos and here. And I also know that my perfectionism can impact my relationships because sometimes they can invite people to be more than what they actually want to be in this moment. And so I want you all to hold all of these, like what gets in the way, with an open palm rather than a closed fist, and being willing to see, oh, the gift of this particular thing, as well as the cost, and how it might be getting in the way of you tapping into a reservoir. We're going to keep it going. So there's the thread. These are our connections, whether it's to people, to communities, to movements, to land, to animals, to the sacred. This is the web that ties us and helps us to build our capacity for real, authentic, interdependent relationship and connection. And it also helps to provide not only support and sustenance, but also accountability and reflections back about who we are and who we're becoming. Some of the things that get in the way, we live in an age of social media right now where there's an illusion of connection without a lot of depth. Everybody's friend now, but we haven't actually talked to each other. And we have been watering down what actual relationship means. Many of us have minimized that. Sometimes competition and comparison can impact the threads that we have. Sometimes we become friends with other people in order to be like them rather than to be their comrade. And then in a world that is very capitalistic, especially in the West, our society can lean towards individualism that separates us from the bigger we, the collective. And we also know that the ways that marginalization works in our world, there is so many different intentional strategies to keep us separated from one another so that we don't build our collective power to transform our conditions. And we also get to resource and offer reconnection to our threads, whether that is observing connection in nature, putting our feet on the earth with consent, building mutual aid networks, creating infrastructure for collective care in our organizations, in our communities, inside of our movements, building kinship beyond work, showing up for people in ways that actually are transformative rather than transactional. So threads. And then there's spark. So what keeps you motivated? What keeps you waking up in the morning and sustaining your commitment over time, which is difficult to do because there's so much, like I've said over and over again, there's so much that is trying to pull our attention away. There's so much that's trying to organize our lives to be more capitalistic, more greedy, more alone. And in an age where human beings are the youngest species and the loneliest species, the rate of despair and depression and anxiety is so high, which can diminish our vitality, our sense of motivation and passion in our lives. That can be, our spark can be impacted by being exhausted. It is so tiring. It is exhausting to move, even in the last 100 days of the new administration, where there have been over 130 executive orders that have been weaponizing our connections, that have been attacking trans people, that have been deporting some of our beloved family. It is exhausting. It is exhausting. And some of that depletion can really impact like our why for living, our why for connection, our why for doing movement work. Some of the things that can re-support connection is honoring the cycles of life and vitality that lives in us, that sometimes we will feel exhausted and sometimes we will be energized, like ebb and flows in an ocean. Making room for play, taking a moment, even right now, of reminding yourself, why are you choosing to be alive? Why are you here? Why are you here? Why are you healing? Why are you extending yourself to make the world a better place? Constantly reminding yourself of your why. We have a few more here. There is compass, and they're connected. This is what guides your internal system, and specifically what guides you to what truly matters. This is what helps you align your actions with your deepest principles. For some of us, what gets in the way is that our measures of livelihood and vitality or success is external. Other people are measuring that for us, our families, our jobs, and we don't have some level of internal congruence around either our value system or our principles that connects us with a good life, whatever we see as that. Sorry for these slides, y'all. Some of the words are spilling in together, but you know what? It's all good. Sometimes fear of judgment, of being ourselves, or even retribution. Many of us are being criminalized right now for choosing to live our lives as our own. Queer and trans folks in particular, folks who have been folks who have been criminalized in many different ways in our world, whether in our medical system or in our housing system, might not feel like they get to be themselves. And then some things that get to support reconnection is, again, listening to how your yes and your no feels before you act. Noticing the difference between who you say you are and how you show up. And every moment is an opportunity to practice some kind of ethical decision making. So even how you're choosing to sit right now is how you're choosing to sit and how you're choosing to listen in alignment with your deepest principles. Okay, and what's helping to guide that choice. Okay. Vision. A number of y'all mentioned vision here. And this is the second to last one. So our vision is our capacity to imagine futures towards our collective liberation. So not just our own, us getting free, but us together. It is how we not just imagine the world that we're fighting or what we're fighting against, but also the world that we're building towards. Some of the things that could get in the way are the ways that our carceral systems internally and externally can punish our imagination. The ways that we are constantly inside of crisis, which impacts our abilities to dream long term. And many of us are heartbroken because we've seen too much. We have seen some of our visions being hijacked. And so we start to lose hope that our visions and what we see in the horizons can actually happen. And there are ways to rebuild this vision by honoring how far we've come, by getting to practice collective imagination in circles where you're not alone, by being in connection with people who are visionaries, including some of the youngest people in your life who are seeing the world through a different perspective. And we have so many blueprints in our legacy. So everything that we're navigating right now, there are patterns that have existed in the past that other people have figured out how to shift. And so we can study how have our folks, we can even talk to our ancestors for folks who have that practice about how did you survive imperialism? How did you survive a breakup? How did you have a baby? How did you give birth to your dreams? And this is the last one, nourish. What replenishes, what restores you? What helps you pour back into yourself? Many of us in this space are caretakers who are used to giving and overextending beyond ourselves. Many of us are participating in martyrdom culture that glorifies self-sacrifice. Many of us have grown up in a world that doesn't have enough for us to live. And so we are constantly overextending ourselves to feel to feel and get what we need to be able to survive. And sometimes internalized oppression seeps into ourselves and reminds us that we don't get to feel joy, we don't get to feel nourished. And some ways to practice to support this is to notice where in your life people can pour into you, and really challenge this false dichotomy between pleasure and justice, that they both cannot coexist, that pleasure can exist in the midst of chaos and crisis, and joy can exist with fatigue, really breaking up those binaries. All right. So those are the reservoirs. Those are 8 of them, y'all. Our roots, insight, shield, spark, compass, thread, vision, nourish. So even from this moment, in this moment, just notice how your body is responding. How is the flow of your breath? Where are you contracted and open? And is there anything that you want to shift to just one, offer yourself a little bit of compassion for how you survived? You have, I imagine, in some way tapped into one or all of these reservoirs to make sure that you exist and also to do social change work. So just extend compassion and gratitude for how you've shown up. Yeah. And just take a moment to offer for whatever reservoir you connected with, whether it was internal or external. Thank that reservoir for how they've shown up in your bones, in your blood, how they shape the soil that's in your neighborhood, how your reservoirs have passed down memory from your guides to your families through song, through dance, through organizing strategy. And then take a moment to get really curious about, oh, that reservoir, that's a reservoir I want to get to know. What is a reservoir within you or around you that your body is curious about, wanting to know more about? Okay. Good. Check out the relationship between the lower part of your body and the top part. And just see if any part of you wants connection. So that might be like, ooh, you want to hold yourself right now. Some of you might want to wiggle your toes and your hands or stretch the neck so that there's a little bit more connection between certain parts or a bit more space. Yes. Okay. Beautiful. Keep connecting with what feels important to connect with. And we're actually going to move into some reflection questions right now. Some of you are already answering these questions. So, and Miles, if you could drop them for me in the chat too, that would be amazing. So, what are 1 to 2 areas in your life where you're either feeling depleted or disconnected right now? 1 to 2. Maybe some of y'all need to stick to one so you don't overwhelm your systems. But what's 1 to 2 areas that in your life where you're feeling depleted or disconnected right now? And which of these reservoirs might help to hold or restore you in this area? And then another question that you could explore is which reservoir, if filled, would make a big impact on your ability to show up with more presence for the social change work that you do in your life? Which reservoir, if filled, would make, it could be the biggest or would make a huge difference in your ability to show up with more presence in your life? Thank you so much, Miles, for dropping in those questions. I'm going to go back to the reservoir so you can see as you answer these questions. And yeah, we'll take some reflections in the chat. We'll take some reflections by voice. Before you start writing, feel first. So feel for how your body wants to answer this question. What does your heartbeat have to say about these questions? What does your stomach have to say about these questions? Okay. Beautiful. Yeah. Y'all are so beautiful. All right, I'm going into the chat. Let's see what's going on here. So many things. Beautiful. M is depleted by the lack of love in certain spaces. I imagine that you might be wanting more connection, more threads that feel more authentic and interdependent. Claudia, I need boundaries. You need boundaries with your family. Yep, I hear that. I'm so glad that you're feeling you are loving and enjoying and fulfilled by your work and learning. That is a gift. And your family's dependence on you is great. Your kids are 8.5 years apart, so I'm here and there. Yeah, that's big. Sounds like a shield. Like what needs to be protected in order for you to show up, and in order for other people to also show up in right relationship with you. Yeah, time for myself where I'm not feeling judged by others for what I do or do not accomplish in my day. Yeah. What is accomplishment? What does that even mean to you? What's your compass around that? Have you let yourself define that for yourself? Saying holding space in my breath to listen to the ancestors speak during these times. Shout out to the ancestors you move with and everything that they're holding with you. Av says that the roads that they've paved allow my feet to stand in knowing that everything I need, everything you need, Av, is available to you. There is a way forward through what may feel or maybe noise. My stillness this morning was in honor of them. Oh, thank you so much. May your stillness honor you and them. May your stillness honor you and them. Allison, I'm noticing for me how more shielding actually supports my deeper nourish. Oof, yeah, sometimes the shield helps to create more nourishment because the shield really protects how much our energy is being dispersed or overextended. Yeah. Really curious about connecting with ancestors for higher understanding. I'll say a couple of things and would invite other folks to share about connecting with ancestors. So many things to say. One thing I'll say, or a few things I'll say right now, is that our ancestors and transcestors are human and non-human. Sometimes for folks, particularly folks who have been disconnected because of colonization, because of imperialism, because you weren't connected to knowledge keepers in your lineage, you might not know the names of the human ancestors in your lineage. And some of those ancestors might want to be known by you. So even just naming the intention, either through dream work, through altar work, creating an intentional space where you are inviting them to build a relationship. It's a relationship. It's a relationship. You're inviting them to come into relationship with you. Helps to set the intention and also helps to invite them into more connection with you. Obviously for certain traditions, different cultures, I know for myself, because I know who my folks are, there's certain foods, songs, places. So that's you, like you know who they are, you know a little bit about them. You can deepen the relationship or bridge the connection by participating intentionally in practices that are familiar to them, that they have loved to do. I have a friend who has an ancestral worship practice that's just dancing. She sits in her room with her drum and just plays the drum. And then for others, your ancestral connection is the land that you have called home. And so whether returning to those lands through physically or through your dreams can be part of an ancestral practice. And sometimes our ancestral practice is connecting to the ancient and present day elements that live in us: fire, water, earth, air. You can literally build altars that include those elements, because all of those elements have also existed in our people. Yeah. So any kind of reservoir in your life requires some practice to be sustained. And so I'm leaving you with a few questions that you can hold with you. Thank you, Claudia. Oh, can people hear me? Can someone? Okay, good. I just heard that you couldn't hear me. All right, so here's some reflection questions to take with you. What's one small practice that you can begin or continue this week to strengthen the particular reservoir that you chose? And then what kind of support might you need? Maybe you reach out to me again. I love talking about this stuff. I'll leave my information at the end. Kripalu is also offering a really magical space over the next few weeks and just in general. So this is another portal of community that you can connect with, that can support how you connect with or build up your reservoirs. And then we also need conditions of satisfaction. Like, how do we know that we are being replenished? How do we know that this reservoir is being filled, so that we're not just intellectualizing that, but it's actually something that feels really embodied inside of us? A couple of other things here in order to sustain your reservoir: really honoring your natural cycles of intensity and rest, especially in this time of a lot of chaos, crisis, and contradiction. And some of us need to practice the minimum effective dose. So, like, what is the smallest sustainable practice that will make a difference within you, rather than doing the biggest thing? And starting from where you are and adapting where you are to be accessible to your body, your energy levels, and literally your life circumstances. Remember your why. Why choose healing? Why choose life? Why choose yourself? Why choose us? Remember your why. And also, patterns of depletion and fatigue, a lot of the things that get in the way, are also reflective of systemic issues, systemic conditions, not our personal failings. And notice how these systemic conditions are always impacting us. So that is my time, y'all. Please connect with me. Thank you so much for everything that you all shared in this space. I'm so deeply grateful to get to learn from you all. May we have the reservoirs that we need to sustain ourselves through time and keep doing this work of building our collective liberation. That's how to get a hold of me. And y'all are amazing and beautiful and powerful.